The Hymn of Samadhi by Swami Vivekananda. The sun is not, nor the beautiful moon, all light extinct. In the great void of space floats shadow-like the image universe. In the void of mind involute, there floats the fleeting universe, rises and floats, sinks again, ceaseless, in the current I. Slowly, slowly, the shadow multitude entered the primal womb and flowed ceaseless, the only current, the I am, I am. 'Tis stopped, even that current flows no more, void merged into void, beyond speech and mind. Whose heart understands, that one verily does. Nahi shurjo, nahi jyoti, nahi shurjo, nahi jyoti, nahi shoshanko, shundaro, nahi shurjo, nahi jyoti, nahi shoshanko, shundaro, bhashe bhume, chhaya shamo, chobi visho, chora choro, nahi shurjo, nahi jyoti, nahi shurjo, nahi jyoti. Ashfuto mono akashe, jogoto সংসার ভাসে, অস্ফুট মন আকাশে, জগত সংসার ভাসে, উঠে ভাসে ডুবে পুন, উঠে ভাসে ডুবে পুন, অহম শ্রুতে নিরন্তর, উঠে ভাসে ডুবে পুন, অহম শ্রুতে নিরন্তর, নাহি সূর্য, নাহি জ্যোতি, নাহি শশাঙ্ক, সুন্দর, নাহি সূর্য, নাহি জ্যোতি। ধীরে ধীরে ছায়ালো মহালয়ে প্রবেশিল, বহে মাত্র আমি আমি, এই ধারা অনুক্ষণ, ধীরে ধীরে ছায়ালো মহালয়ে প্রবেশিল, বহে মাত্র আমি আমি, এই ধারা অনুক্ষণ, সে ধারা বোধ হল, শূন্যে শূন্য মিলাইল, সে ধারা বোধ হল, শূন্যে শূন্য মিলাইল, আবাং মনস গোচরম, বোঝে প্রাণ বোঝে জয়, আবাং মনস গোচরম, বোঝে প্রাণ বোঝে Shushanku Shundaro Bhashe Chaya Sham Chobi Vishu Chora Choro Nahi Shurju Nahi Jyoti Nahi Shurju Nahi Jyoti Nahi Shurju Nahi Jyoti.
Om Ashatu Ma Sadgamaya Tamasho Ma Jyotirgamaya Amrityur Ma Amritangamaya Avir Avir Maidhi Rudra Jate Dakshinang Mukham Te Namang Pahi Nityam Te Namang Pahi Nityam. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. O Lord, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness to light and illumination. Lead us from death to immortality. And evermore shine in our hearts with your resplendent face. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us all. Welcome to you all. We have a great privilege of having Swami Sarvapriyananda with us. Today, he does not need any introduction. You know much more than I know. He is so dear to us. We are very happy that he is with us. Wherever he is, he gives the boosting to our inner spiritual reality. Reminds us always who we are, who we are. Swami Vivekananda, Hari Maharaj, Turiyananda used to say, day and night say, I am that, I am that, I am that. No? So who will remind us? The scriptures remind us. And the spiritual people who live that life get inspired by that. They want us to live in that consciousness, not to think of this limited body and mind and our little fails and failures and success and our sufferings and pains, to go above that. That's the clarion message of the Vedanta, is the saving rescue for all of us. So we are very happy to have Swami Sarvapriyananda. I don't want to speak much, but want to hear from him. So he's vacation, but we don't allow him to take vacation. Make him much work. So yesterday he was there with us in Swamiji house, Pasadena house, for the open house of the Swami Vivekananda stay at that place. And Swami spoke there and was present there, and he's here today. But he is here for vacation only 2-3 days, and he goes to San Francisco again to maybe different areas. So we'll get this chance today, and also we'll have another evening chance on the 19th, Tuesday at 7:30. He will be speaking here again. So I welcome Swami. Please come.
Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityur Ma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. Good morning, everybody. It's wonderful to be back here and see so many familiar faces, or half faces, sort of. My pranams to revered Swami Sarvapriyananda Ji Maharaj, other revered monks and nuns here, and namaskars to all of you. When Swami Vivekananda was here, he met Robert Ingersoll, who was very famous at that time, not such a well-known name these days, but he was famous as the Great Agnostic. In fact, even now, if you Google the Great Agnostic, you will get Robert Ingersoll. And I didn't know, while researching for this talk, I found out that Yale University Press has just means about 8 or 9 years ago, published a biography of Robert Ingersoll titled The Great Agnostic. He was one of the most famous orators at that time. At that time, in the late 19th century, public speaking, oratory, was the great entertainment. So people would flock to it. People are not so much patient these days. I mean, you have TED Talks, but instead of 20 minutes, imagine a 2-hour TED Talk. So people are not all that patient these days. I remember a few weeks back, I was walking in Central Park in Manhattan, and a gentleman came up to me, stepped up to me and said, "Hey, aren't you that guy on YouTube with the really long talks?" So I had to sheepishly say yes, I was the culprit. And Robert Ingersoll was actually one of the most well-known orators at that time. And Swami Vivekananda met him once, at least once that we know of. And Ingersoll gave his usual, what they say, spiel. They say there's something called an elevator spiel. That means whatever your movie project is in Hollywood or your PhD project is at Harvard, you should be able to, tell that in the 1 minute it takes to go on an elevator ride. So show that you're clear about it. So he gave his agnostic spiel to Swami Vivekananda. He says, "I don't believe in all of this, spirituality, religion. This world is the only thing that we are sure of. And I believe in squeezing the orange of this world dry." Swami Vivekananda's answer is something to be noted. He said, "I believe in that too. But I know a better way of squeezing the orange. I know that I cannot die, and therefore I'm not in a hurry. I know there is no fear, therefore I can enjoy the squeezing. I love every man and woman. I see God in everybody. Imagine the joy, delight of seeing God in all beings. Squeeze the orange of the world in this way and get 10,000-fold from it. Get every last drop." So these are Swami Vivekananda's words. I want to talk today about that knowledge, by which knowledge Swami Vivekananda knows that there is no death, and therefore he's not afraid, he's not in a hurry, that there is no fear. You can enjoy life and lives in plurality. And how to see God in all beings and be filled with the joy of loving all beings by seeing God in them. What is that knowledge? That's our subject. And that's the subject of Vedanta, actually. And the way Swami Vivekananda taught Vedanta, if you ask Vivekananda, how would you summarize Vedanta? He said that 2 aspects. One is the divinity within all of us. So to see God in all beings, that means there is God within us, in our reality. So the inner divinity, that's one pillar of Vedanta. And the other one is the oneness of all existence. You are divine, you are one with God, and the entire universe is one with you. So this divine oneness, let us say, this is a good way of encapsulating Vedanta. But it sounds cool to say that, but how do you understand it? And more importantly, how do we realize it and make it a living reality in our lives? That is the subject matter of Vedanta. And the particular teaching that I have chosen, the field and its knower, that's the subject today. That's taken from the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And peculiarly, it conforms to this paradigm, the divinity within us and the oneness of all existence. That's what the teaching is. So I want to go into that this morning. we are talking about ultimate things. We are talking about the final teaching, the highest teaching, the deepest teaching. So you have to be ready for a heavy dose of metaphysics and logic. But it's fun. I mean, I enjoy it. I don't know about you. And I've got a captive audience, willing victims, so I'm going to enjoy myself. The 13th chapter is a bit of an oddity. 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is a bit of an oddity because depending upon which version of the Bhagavad Gita you start with, it either starts with a question by Arjuna, with a verse. The first verse is a question by Arjuna, and then Krishna starts teaching, or it starts directly with the teachings of Krishna. So in some books, there is an extra verse, in some versions of the Bhagavad Gita, and that one extra verse is the first verse of the 13th chapter or not. Sometimes it's not there. If it is there, then you have 701 verses in the whole Bhagavad Gita. If that question is not there, then you have 700 verses. Why would that be a controversy? Because in the ancient commentaries, including Shankaracharya's commentary, which I'll rely upon heavily this morning, in the ancient commentaries, they take no note of that first verse of the question. And the question is very simply just the topics covered in the 13th chapter. So some people think that that verse might have been put together, just as a segue into the chapter. Arjuna asks, Prakritim Purusham Chaiva. By the way, I'll use a lot of Sanskrit, but I'll translate every word. You can... We used to have these classes here in the library, and there was a gentleman always at the back who objected to too much use of Sanskrit. So we had an understanding. He would wave his hands wildly if there was too much Sanskrit, So, and then I would be careful to translate every word. But Arjuna asks, Prakritim Purusham Chaiva Kshetram Kshetragyam Evacha Etad Veditum Ichchami Jnanam Geyam Cha Keshava. What does that mean? I want to know these things. What is Prakriti, nature? What is Purusha, the ultimate reality or our inner being? Then what is the field and what is the knower of the field? What is knowledge and what is to be realized? These are the things I want to know. But here we focus on the field and the field knower, these two terms. Kshetra in Sanskrit means field, and Kshetragya, the knower of the field. Because that's the name of the chapter. The chapter takes its name from these two terms. The actual teaching starts with Krishna. So depending upon your version of the Gita, it's either the first verse or the second verse. And these are some of the most important verses in the Bhagavad Gita. By some accounts, the most important, the first and the second verses. Shankaracharya, many ancient philosophers have written commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita, ancient and medieval. And the oldest commentary, one of the most profound commentaries we have, and the oldest one which we have, there were earlier commentaries, but they are lost now. The oldest one which we have is Shankaracharya's commentary, dating back some 1400 years. He writes the most massive, the most extensive commentary on this verse, the second verse of the 13th chapter, which we will come to. No other verse comes even close. The commentaries on those other verses of the entire Bhagavad Gita, those verses, even the longest commentaries on some of these verses do not come close to the densely written philosophical Sanskrit, page after page. I was counting just day before yesterday, it's 16 pages with English translation. And without the English translation, it would be about 5 to 6 pages of densely written Sanskrit. So, it's that important. Not only Shankaracharya, it has been a bone of contention, of debate through the ages, even as recently as, 30 or 40 years ago. There was a great debate in India between the non-dualists and the dualists. The non-dualists saying that Krishna is teaching, you are one with God. You and God, you are the ultimate reality. And the dualists claiming that, no, Krishna is teaching, you have to know yourself and you have to know God. The exact phrase used by Krishna is, Kshetragyam chapi mam viddhi. Know me as the knower of the field, in all fields. Now that can be interpreted in two ways. We'll come to all that, but just to tell you about the debate. One way is that I, God, am the knower of the field in all fields. That's one interpretation. Or Sanskrit. You can arrange the words in such a way it means, Know the knower of the field, that's know yourself, and know God. That also is an acceptable interpretation. But one leads to non-duality, and the other one leads to duality. Non-duality means you and God are one reality. Duality means you and God are separate realities. There's a huge debate by a great Advaita master of the 20th century, Kashikananda Giri, who has passed recently. I read his book. That's how I found out about the debate. So he took the non-dualist position, and there was a great scholar who took the dualistic position, and they had a fierce debate which interpretation is right, which ended with the audience, which was neatly divided into like two aisles, dualists and non-dualists, ended up with throwing chairs at each other. So the debate dissolved into chaos. Luckily, you have pews here. You can't throw them at each other. And this non-dualistic Swami, he wrote a book later where I heard all about this. I read all about it. He says that I wrote to the organizers of the debate asking who won, and they didn't reply. And so I take it that I have won. And the name of the book is My Victorious Debate with the Dualists. That's the name of the book. Or the Victorious Parade of Non-Duality. That's the name of the book. So we are going to take the non-dualist position here and investigate the teachings of Sri Krishna. The first verse goes like this. Sri Krishna starts the teaching to Arjuna saying this. Idam shariram kaunteya kshetram ityabhidhiyate etadyo vetti tam praho kshetragya iti tadvidaha. He says, O Arjuna, know this body to be the field. This body, here, your body, know this to be the field. And in this body, you, the one who experiences this body, the one in this body who experiences this body, know that one to be the knower of the field. Pretty simple. Notice, this is just what the teaching is confirming to our quotidian experience, our day-to-day experience. What is that experience? Here, I have a body. This is a body. You're calling it the field? Good. I can call it the field. And I experience my own body. I know the body here. I feel it. I can see it. I can touch it. So I know this body. So you're calling me the knower of the field? Fair enough. So we have the field and the knower of the field. So what? Here Krishna gives us a key, sort of master key to unlock this mystery. Now, talking about the key, I was reminded of these beautiful lines by Eliot. T.S. Eliot actually was deeply inspired by the Upanishads and the Gita. In some of the original manuscripts, you find penciled notes in the wasteland, for example, quotations from Upanishads. And he was inspired by Vedanta. But one of the lines which I read recently was so profound from an Advaitic perspective. Eliot says, each one of us looking for the key to the prison. First line, each one of us looking for the key. Each looking for the key to the prison. Second line, each looking for the key, thus confirming the prison. And I think we'll find the mystery we understand it better at the end of this talk. How we dissolve. We don't open the prison, we dissolve the prison altogether. We'll see. Here he gives us the key, the knower of the field. Now, the field actually is the entire universe. Whatever is knowable, whatever we experience is the field, but specifically it starts with the body. Why? The reason is, here's an investigation into our own nature. Who am I or what am I? And we never have any problem about, sitting on the chair. I don't think I'm the chair. I'm talking here on with the podium. I don't think I'm the podium. I don't think I'm even the shirt which I'm wearing. But the moment I come to the skin, aha. I see, I know the podium and I'm not the podium. Very clear. It would be awful if I know the podium and I became the podium. I know the podium and therefore I am not the podium. I know the shirt. I know means I can see the shirt and therefore I am not the shirt. I know the body and therefore there I hesitate. Can I say I'm not the body? I know the body, so can I say I'm not the body? There we hesitate. That's why Krishna starts with the body. He says, look at the body. This is the field. And you are the knower of the field. Knower of the field and the field are distinct. Whatever you know, that must be distinct from you. This is one of the first deep insight, profound insight of Vedanta. Straight away, the meaning of the words field and knower of the field is just as we experience it. Here's the body, this is a field, and here I am somewhere. I am the knower of the field. Go a little deeper. Notice one thing, the knower and the known must be different. Whatever you see is an object. You are the seer. The seer and the seen must be different. The knower and the known. See, knowledge operates, and therefore the subject and object must be different. Just as a knife cannot cut itself, similarly, the knowing subject cannot make itself an object. It's a very philosophical way of saying that whatever you experience, whatever you know, must be in some sense distinct from you. Otherwise, it couldn't be an object of our knowledge. So Drig Drishya Viveka, this is one technique, favorite of mine, which tries to answer the question using this principle, that whatever you know must be distinct from you. So it starts off very simply. It says that whatever you see is different from the seer. Yes, if you look at this very clearly, we see that this is distinct from the eyes. The eyes are the seer and this is the seen. And the two are different. In fact, not only this, whatever the eyes see, they are all different from the eyes. In fact, the only thing that the eyes cannot see are the eyes themselves. Whatever is not distinct from the eyes, that the eyes cannot see. The eyes are not distinct from the eyes, therefore the eyes do not see themselves. Swami, haven't you seen reflections? Have you seen yourself in a mirror? Yes, but in a mirror you see we see a reflection of ourselves. We don't see the eyes see a reflection. The eyes don't see themselves the way they're seeing other things. If you take a selfie, you'll see a picture of your eyes, but the eyes won't see themselves the way they are seeing other things right now. So, the eyes are distinct from the forms which are seen. Forms are many, the eyes are the same. Forms are changing, the eyes are relatively unchanging. Go a little deeper. The eyes themselves, they become an object to the mind. How? My eyes are open. I can barely keep my eyes open, which is a problem in Vedanta talks, inevitably. I know, who knows this? You know this about the eyes. We know this about the eyes with the mind. So the mind is the knower and the eyes are the known. But if you apply that same principle, the mind and the eyes are different. They have to be. Otherwise the mind wouldn't be able to know the eyes. And not only that, the mind knows not only the eyes but all the other sense organs. And all that the mind knows is continuously changing, but the mind, remaining the mind, can know all these changes. Go deeper. The mind itself is known. After all, when you are happy, you know you are happy. When you are miserable, we know that we are miserable. When there is pain, I know that I am in pain. When I am feeling great, I know that I am feeling great. When I understand something, I know that I understand something. So knowledge, ignorance, pleasure, pain, memory, loss of memory, all of these are known. These are all events in the mind. But they are all known. Known in the sense we are aware of them. Therefore, that which is aware of the contents of the mind must be, by that principle, knower and known are different. Seer and seen are different. Therefore, that which knows the contents of the mind must be different from the mind. So this awareness, why am I calling it awareness? Because it is aware, it's giving us experience. So this awareness, which is knowing the contents of my mind, I, the awareness, am aware of the contents of my mind, therefore I must be distinct from the mind. The contents of the mind are many. Thoughts, emotions, ideas, memories, even the sense of ego, I, that's also part of the mind. And the contents of the mind are many, but this awareness is one. This consciousness is one. The mind keeps changing. Consciousness is one, does not change. So this consciousness, distinct from the mind, one and unchanging, this consciousness, it is termed Sakshi, or witness consciousness. So this is what Vedanta points to as a first step. As you. This is what Krishna is pointing towards by saying, knower of the field, kshetrajna. So one term, Kshetrajna, knower of the field. The other term, Sakshi, witness consciousness. When we investigate the knower of the field, right away, instinctively, I feel, okay, I am here, knower of this body. But what exactly am I? When we investigate using the clue given by Krishna. What is the clue given by Krishna? Here in this field is the one who knows that field, implying thereby the knower must be distinct from the field. How is the knower distinct from the field? You apply this kind of a technique, Drig Drishya Viveka, seer and seen, the distinction of the seer and the seen, and we come to the conclusion, I, the knower of the field, I'm there, I exist. But what's my nature? My nature is the witness consciousness, is awareness. I, the unchanging awareness, am aware through the changing mind and the active and changing sense organ, sensory system. I'm aware of this body and the external world. This is the knower of the field, and this body and the external world, especially the body is the field and also the world. So I am awareness. I am consciousness. I'm using them without any particular distinction. Awareness, consciousness, witness consciousness, knower of the field, Atman, self. Self with a capital S. What would be self with a small s? It's just before we discern anything, before we philosophize, before we inquire, just me, plain old me, I am the self. What exactly are you? If I think about it, if I dive deep into it, then I have to say, whatever I am, I must be aware, I exist, and I'm aware. That seems to constitute my essential nature. If there is an essential nature, it must be that I exist and I'm aware. What am I aware of? First of all, I'm aware of the mind. By mind, I mean thoughts, memories, ideas, emotions. And through that, I'm aware of the senses and the inputs of the senses. And through that, I'm aware of the body and the external world. Activities, it's dynamic, things are changing. This witness consciousness is the knower of the field. Now notice, this witness consciousness, this awareness, it's the same when you see many, many things. Whether you are hearing so many sounds and music and talk and noise, and indeed silence. You are aware. Noise, speech arose and faded away. That awareness which was aware of the speech is aware of the fading away of the speech and of silence. So noise, sights, taste, smell, touch, all the inputs of the senses, and they are all different from each other. They all keep changing. But what's constant and what illumines all of them? Like the one light which illumines the entire room, similarly, there's this light of awareness, this consciousness, that constitutes our basic nature, what we are. It's there right now. It's what we are right now. Not only all these, perceptions, but also internally, in our own minds, various kinds of thoughts come, emotions come, memories come. They come and go, they're all lit up by that same consciousness. Thoughts, feelings, memories, they change. Emotions change. Happy, sad, they change. But that consciousness is constant. It lights up all our internal, the technical word is apperception. Not only that, the same consciousness continues through waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. We are awake now, hopefully. And soon, tonight you'll fall asleep and will dream. You'll wake up again. The experiences are tremendously different. The moment you fall asleep, the entire external world disappears. Even our own body disappears. We're sleeping on the bed, but we are not aware of it. And we have an entire dream world coming up. But the point here is the same awareness continues. Same consciousness continues in dream. And everything shuts down in deep sleep. And Vedanta claims it's the same consciousness which reveals the utter absence, which is basically deep sleep, the blankness. Even the blankness of mind. No thought, no object. No thoughts, no external world, no body, nothing. Nothing is presented to you, the subject, but you remain as awareness, according to Vedanta. So same awareness continues in waking, dreaming, deep sleep. It continues unbroken through time. You see, it was the same awareness which is there right now. You're listening to this talk. It is the same awareness when the body was the body of a baby in your mother's arms. And as a kid playing, and as a young person in school, job and marriage and families and kids, growing up older, same awareness. Everything has changed. The body has changed so much. The mind has changed so much. Think of the body of the baby. Think of the mind of the baby. You can't even think about it. The mind of the baby is so alien to you now. And yet, the awareness was the same. Think about it. The awareness was the same, constant. The same awareness. Watch the ever-changing world, the ever-changing body, and the ever-changing mind. The same awareness through time. Through space. I was a couple of days ago, I was in Manhattan, walking down there in the Central Park. Here I'm across a continent. It's not a country, it's a continent. It takes 6 hours to fly across. When I was in India, I used to think India was big. No, this is much, much bigger. Same awareness which saw New York and Central Park, the same awareness which is seeing Hollywood now. Awareness is the same. Place has changed dramatically. Time changes, space changes. Awareness constant. This one awareness, this one witness consciousness, this is what Krishna means when he says, in every body there is the knower, the consciousness, the awareness, which is called Kshetragya, knower of the field. Or you can call it the witness consciousness, Sakshin. Call it the Atman, the self. For those who have studied Vedanta in a classical way, what is being the entirety of what I did can be put in half a phrase. It's called Tvam Padartha Shodhana, an analysis of the term you. It is called the difference between Vachyartha, Lakshyartha. Vachyartha means the primary meaning, and Lakshyartha means implied meaning. The primary meaning of the word knower of the field is you. The implied meaning of the word knower of the field is pure consciousness, is the witness consciousness. Okay. This is great. This is amazing. So I am pure consciousness. I am not the body. The body can come and go. The mind keeps changing, ups and downs. If its mind is happy, great. If the mind is unhappy, not so great. But I am free of it because I am the witness of all of that. I am not affected by the ups and downs of the world, of the body, of the mind. Which is great. But is this the teaching about the field and the knower of the field? Shankaracharya in his commentary says, Kim itavan matra jnane na kshetra kshetra jneo. Is this enough to know the secret of the field and the knower of the field? He says, no. The real teaching is coming next. You see, two things have been left unsaid here. When we think like this, we have two questions, or we should have two questions. What are the two questions? One question is, this sounds great, but one thing I'm not very sure about. Here are clearly so many bodies, so many fields, as Krishna would call them. So if there is a knower of the field in this body, I am the knower of the field in this body. There's so many bodies here, billions more outside, and the non-human creatures also. So in each body, is there a separate knower of the field? How many of us are there? Billions and billions, or one? Well, you know Vedanta, that's why you said one. I can't keep this audience in suspense. They're all Vedanta veterans here, so they know all the answers. So is it, how many of us are there? It's a great philosophical question. The great system of Sankhya philosophy, the great systems of Yoga philosophy, of Nyaya philosophy, of Vaisheshika philosophy, Purva Mimamsa philosophy, all of them are unanimous in saying, we are many. We are not one. It's Advaita Vedanta which says, we are one. And Krishna is going to say that. So he's going to answer this question. How many of us are there? How many knowers of the field? How many consciousnesses? I'm just reminded of von Heisenberg, who apparently said consciousness is that singular for which there is no plural. But anyway, how? We'll see how. That's one question. The second question is, what about God? Isn't this supposed to be a religious kind of place? You've talked about existence and fields and knowers of fields and consciousness and stuff like that. What about God? You haven't even gotten to God yet. So the question about what about God? Where is God? Is God on the side of the field? Then God will become an object. Or is God on the other side, knower of the field? Then God will become me. I am God. That's all. Both seem crazy. Is God a thing? Or is God... These are the only two options being offered by Krishna. There are only two things. Knower and known. Subject and object. Field and field knower. Both of these questions. Question about how many of us are there? How many consciousnesses? How many knowers? And what about God? I remember when I was a newly minted monk about 18 years ago in Belur Mutt, in our main monastery, I was asked to give a talk, one of my first talks as a new, after getting the vows of monasticism. So I gave a talk. Afterwards, the usual kind of talk I give, like this. Then afterwards, an elderly gentleman came up to me, gave some well-meaning feedback. He said, "Swami, your talk was good, it was nice. But you add a little Rama, a little Krishna, then it'll be fine, you know. Your talks are good, but you add a little God to it, you know. We need God. Can't do without God." There was a gentleman who used to visit here quite regularly, Peter Kowalski, I think. So he gave an interview. I saw him on the net, an interview. He was asked to talk about what is Vedanta. He said, "How do I put it to you? Well, let's put it this way. Think of Buddhism, but with God. That's Vedanta." So what about God? Where's God in all of this? In the second verse, Krishna comes to the second verse, and this is a stunning verse. The verse goes like this. Kshetragyam chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata kshetra kshetragyayor jnanam yattajnanam matam mama. O Arjuna, know me alone to be the knower of the field in all these fields. This knowledge of the field and the knower of the field is knowledge according to my humble opinion. This is the thing to be known in life. So here is the direct answer. In half a verse, know me, God says to man, Krishna says to Arjuna, know me to be the knower of the field in all fields. What a stunning statement. Here, God is declaring his identity with the human, with this sentient being. Direct answers. What were the two questions? How many are there? One. Krishna says one. And we'll see what he means by that. And what is that one? That one is God. That one consciousness in all beings is God. What does that mean? All right. First of all, so all right, Krishna says it's one consciousness, but you notice how we have suddenly moved from reasoning and experience into scriptural authority. Somebody said, "Swami, till now you were arguing very nicely. Look at yourself as the object and you are the experiencing subject, and the subject and object must be different. It sounds pretty convincing, it's pretty nice. And right now you have jumped into, to establish oneness, you have jumped into authority. Krishna says, I am the one consciousness in all beings." Good. We are all reverential. Krishna says that, but can you convince us logically? How do you think that there is one consciousness in all beings? What Advaita does, and this is the debate between non-duality, Advaita, and say the Sankhya philosophy, for example. The Sankhya philosophy insists there are what is called Bahupurushavada, many consciousnesses. What would be their argument? How can you say there is one consciousness? And Advaita answers, counter question. Why would you say there are many consciousnesses? What do you mean? Well, look at it this way. Why would you say there are many bodies? And it's obvious. Look, there are so many bodies. You can't. Take a census. You'll have millions and billions of bodies. So bodies are many. There's no doubt about it. Minds. Why would you say, are there many minds or one mind? Many, many minds. Take a survey. Ask a question. You'll find so many answers, which means minds are different. So many minds. Minds are different. Bodies are different. But apart from body and mind, why would you say consciousness is different? And the Sankhyan says, no, you're mixing up things. It'll lead to so many problems. Like? Well, the death of one person would be the death of everybody. That will be terrible. But then that's so easily answered. Death is of the body, not of consciousness. If one body dies, doesn't mean all the other bodies have to die. Death is in the body. Well, what about if one person falls asleep, everybody would fall asleep if it's one consciousness, which would be terrible in a Vedanta class, because somebody is sleeping all the time. You'll get one or two people sleeping all the time. So if one person falls asleep, everybody would fall asleep. That would be terrible. But then, what falls asleep? What wakes? What is waking? What is dreaming? And what is sleeping? It's the mind, not consciousness. Remember we did that? The same consciousness which experiences the waking and the waking world, and the dreamer and the dream world, and the deep sleep experience. All of that is the same unchanging consciousness. Consciousness is not waking, dreaming, or in deep sleep. It is mind. So this is where we differ from the present day sort of muddled understanding of consciousness. A very clear differentiation between mind and consciousness. Then the Sankhyan comes back and says, see, all of these arguments which the Sankhyan presents, you get the drift. You can easily make a distinction between body and mind and answer all these questions. For example, if it was one consciousness, it would be so nice. If my guru is enlightened, I would become enlightened. Then I wouldn't have to try all this. But it doesn't work. So clearly it's not one consciousness. Again, the non-dualist says, my dear Sankhyan, you're mixing up mind and consciousness. Where is ignorance? Where is knowledge? It's in the mind. Knowledge is a function of the mind. So the mind has ignorance, and knowledge comes in the mind and removes that ignorance. But consciousness is the same consciousness. Isn't it our experience? I who was ignorant, now I am the one who knows. So if I, the awareness, experience the ignorance in the mind, I'm the same awareness experiencing the lack of ignorance, the removal of ignorance, the arising of knowledge in the mind. Therefore, knowledge and ignorance come and go to me, the same consciousness. If you look at it that way, it seems pretty easy. So, one consciousness. The Sankhyan arguments in favor of multiple consciousnesses do not stand. One consciousness in all bodies and minds. And Vedanta says it is that one consciousness in association with one body and mind is a sentient being, a jiva, you or I. The same consciousness in association with all bodies and minds, in association with the entire universe, is God. But the consciousness in itself is the same. Apart from bodies and minds, apart from the cosmos, apart from the microcosm and the macrocosm, the consciousness itself is the same. Therefore, you and God are the same reality in a sense. You can say, Aham Brahmasmi. The teacher can teach you, Tattvamasi, that thou art. That thou art. So it sounds blasphemous, that. Thou art. Don't look around. Who's the lucky one? All of us are the lucky one. All of us are the lucky one. That thou art. And in fact, that's what we sing every day. Every day when we have the hymn sung to Sri Ramakrishna here, Jyotira Jyoti Ujala Ridikandara, the light of lights shining within me in my heart. What is the light of lights? That light which illumines the mind and the body. It's the knower of the field. Whom are you singing to? To God. That means that light of lights and you are the same light of lights. But then a question might arise, what about this entire world? Yes, notice how we moved from, I thought I am this body-mind. We have stepped back from the body-mind, I am one consciousness. That was the first step. Knower of the field. Body-mind is field. Body is field, mind is also field. I am the knower of the body-mind. I am the knower of the field. Good. Step one. Step two. There is only one knower of the field in millions and billions of fields. In millions and billions of bodies and minds, there is only one knower of the field, one consciousness. That was step two. But that still is not non-duality. After all, non-duality means not two. But there is still duality here. One consciousness and everything else. What do you mean by everything else? Millions and billions of minds and millions and billions of living bodies and billions of non-living entities in the world, from quarks to quasars, from viruses to whales, So many things are there in the world. They're all the field. And you have the one consciousness, the knower of the field. Still duality. All of that is hidden in this short cryptic statement Krishna says. This knowledge of field and knower of the field is knowledge according to me. What he means there is, the commentators say, this is the same meaning as Tat Tvamasi, that thou art, the Mahavakya. This is a Mahavakya. Mahavakya means the identity of God and man, of the divine and the human, this statement of identity. You are that reality. That's called Mahavakya in Sanskrit. Mahavakya means the profound sentence, the great sentence, which encapsulates the entirety of Vedanta. This is one beauty of Vedanta. Vast literature, sophisticated philosophy, metaphysics, logic, but it can all be encapsulated in one sentence. That thou art. And Krishna, that's from the Chandogya Upanishad. But here Krishna is saying exactly the same thing. Know me to be the knower of the field in all these fields. Now, this entire universe, this entire cosmos is an appearance in that consciousness. It's not a separate existence apart from that consciousness. Because it is I'm not going into the logic to prove that, it can be proved also. But apart from that consciousness, there is no second reality. Just as there is no, in a movie you may see cars and, Hollywood, so movie you may see cars and people and earth and sky, but none of them exist apart from the screen on which it is being shown. The screen is non-dual with respect to all the characters in the movie, all the objects in the movie, all the activities, the incidents in the movie. They are not a second reality apart from the screen. The thousands of waves that you see in the Pacific Ocean, they are not apart from the water. It's one water appearing as 10,000 waves. Krishna would say later in the Gita, Avibhaktam cha bhuteshu vibhaktam iva cha sthitam. Undivided in all beings, appearing as if divided. What is undivided in all beings? Krishna, God, is undivided in all beings, appearing as if divided. Look, so many. What is undivided in all beings? Consciousness, appearing as if in so many consciousnesses. What is undivided in all beings? You. You are undivided in all beings, but you appear to be divided as so many. Not only that, you appear to be divided as I am the other. The other is an appearance in you, in the greater self, S, the capital S self. All this is encapsulated in the great Vedantic saying, Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya Jiva Brahmaiva Napara. Brahman alone is real, consciousness alone is real. The world is an appearance in consciousness. Well, good for consciousness in the world. What about poor old me? You are that consciousness. You are that ultimate reality. Once Sri Ramakrishna was asked by somebody, he said that, can you teach me spirituality in one sentence? So he limited Sri Ramakrishna, because otherwise, ask Sri Ramakrishna to teach you spirituality, the whole gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, 1,000 pages is there. So, can you teach me spirituality in one sentence? And Sri Ramakrishna said to that man, Brahman is real, the world is an appearance. Or consciousness is real, the world is an appearance in consciousness. Contemplate this, assimilate this. Having said this, Sri Ramakrishna fell silent. He kept quiet, which means, Swami Brahmananda says, which means this is all that has to be taught in spiritual life. This is the essence, the kernel of spiritual life. This is the teaching. There's one divinity. This is the meaning of Swami Vivekananda when he says that there is divinity within each of us. We are the divinity within the human being, already within each of us, and the oneness of all existence. What is the divinity within each of us? The knower of the field. Kshetragya, the field knower, pure consciousness, witness consciousness. And what is the unity of all existence? It's that one consciousness which appears as all of this. The entire universe is one with us. We alone are appearing as our own object and the subject. Swami Vivekananda writes in one poem, one alone exists, it appears as nature's soul. One alone exists, it appears as nature, all of this, and soul, you. You are that one. This is the knowledge which Swami Vivekananda, based on this, he said to Ingersoll, that I know that I will not die, therefore I am not in a hurry. Bodies die, they come and go. I am not in a hurry. I know there is no fear. Therefore, I enjoy the squeezing of the orange. And he also said to Ingersoll, I agree with you, we may just differ in our choice of fruit. With you, it's an orange. With me, it's a mango. He said that, actually. I enjoy the squeezing of the orange because I know there is no fear. He says, I love all men and women because I see God in them. Think of the joy of seeing the divine, of seeing God in all beings. Seeing God in all beings means what? Know me alone to be the knower of the field in all these fields. I alone, my real nature, higher self, I am all of these. You are all one with me. We are all one with you. In this way, Swami Vivekananda said, squeeze the orange to get 10,000-fold more. Get every last drop. I pray to Swami Vivekananda, I pray to Sri Ramakrishna, the Holy Mother, to bless us so that this great insight may dawn upon us in this very life, and we may, for the first time, enjoy squeezing the orange of life, We will have some question and answer. So there'll be some music, and I'm sure you've got questions and answers. We'll have a short question and answer session here. Thank you.
Shri Ramakrishna Mangarakari, Shri Ramakrishna Mangarakari, Nama Narayana Bhavadukahari, Nama Narayana Bhavadukahari, Shri Ramakrishna Mangarakari, Shri Ramakrishna Mangarakari, Nama Narayana Bhavadukahari, Nama Narayana Bhavadukahari, Shri Ramakrishna Mangarakari, Shri Ramakrishna Mangarakari, Nama Narayana Bhavadukahari, Nama Narayana Bhavadukahari, Narendra Sevita Jiva Hitakari, Narendra Sevita Jiva Hitakari, Sharara Pujita Bhuvana Bihari, Sharara Pujita Bhuvana Bihari, Sharanagata Jana Raksharakari, Sharanagata Jana Raksharakari, Nama Narayana Nararupakari, Nama Narayana Nararupakari, Kari, Shri Ramakrishna Mangarakari, Shri Ramakrishna Mangarakari, Nama Narayana Nararupadani, Nama Narayana Nararupadani, Shri Ramakrishna Mangarakari, Shri Ramakrishna Mangarakari, Nama Narayana Bhavadukahari, Nama Narayana Bhavadukahari, Shri Ramakrishna Mangarakari, Shri Ramakrishna Mangarakari, Nama Narayana Bhavadukahari, Nama Narayana Bhavadukahari, Narendra Sevita Jiva Hidakari, Narendra Sevita Jiva Hidakari, Sharada Pujita Bhuvana Bihari, Sharada Pujita Bhuvana Bihari, Sharanagata Jana Rakshanakari, Sharanagata Jana Rakshanakari, Nama Narayana Bhavadukahari, Nama Narayana Bhavadukahari, Ramakrishna Jaya Jaya Ramakrishna Jaya Jai Jai Ramakrishna Jai Bolo Ramakrishna Jai Jai Ramakrishna Jai 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 Shri Ramakrishna Mangarakari, Nama Narayana Bhavadukahari.
So next Sunday, or next will be the concept of Guru by Swami Sarvapriyananda. And the weekday classes will be there. But more interestingly, please, 19th evening, Swami Sarvapriyananda ji will be speaking. The topic will be knowing and becoming. So now Swami will give the question answer. I don't want to take time by saying what he said. So that is enough, and we can question will bring out much more things. Thank you. Please take the microphone who have to say something.
Raise your hand. Hari Om Swamiji.
Tell us your name and ask the question. And
Sure. Can I sit or stand?
You can sit and stand, whatever you like.
Yeah, my name is Kapil Verma. My question is, so there is a prison, and that's why we're looking for a key. The prison is the mind. So specifically, I'm asking in terms of fear. Like if there is fear, how do we use Vedanta to overcome fear? For example, if someone's claustrophobic, so that fear is very real to them in situations where like they're in an enclosed space, or there is a reality of they being in a situation they'll be confined in a space for a while. So how do we use Vedantic thought process to overcome fear, and especially for situations like claustrophobia?
Right. So how do you overcome fear? For example, claustrophobia using Vedanta. First of all, even claustrophobic, don't sit in enclosed spaces. That's a good way of not being claustrophobic. But seriously, notice what was done in Vedanta. As you said, the prison of the mind. Why is the mind a prison? Because I think I am this body-mind, and so whatever happens to this body-mind, in this body-mind, it's affecting me. But what Vedanta did was in 2 steps. First of all, it showed me that I am not this body-mind. Why am I not this body-mind? How am I not this body-mind? Because it's an object I'm aware of. Are you not aware of the body? Is it not the field? Yes. And if you're the knower of the field, you cannot be the field. The mind is also the field. Why? Because you know it. If you know it, then it's an object, it's not you. Therefore, you are not trapped by the mind. How does that work? You'll say, wherefore? How did that happen? It sounds like some kind of sleight of hand, It happens like this. It's because I think I am this one, therefore I feel trapped. If, for example, a fear in the mind. Now, in Vedanta, the principle is whatever belongs to whatever place, don't misplace things, keep things in their rightful place. It's a clumsy English translation of what I had heard, very straightforward in Hindi instruction. Mahatma ji, jo jahan ka hai, usko wahin rakhiye. Oh monk, whatever belongs to, keep things in their own places. Where does fear belong? In the mind. What does that mean? Fear is literally not in the body. I mean, it has bodily consequences. There are chemicals and all. But the feeling of fear, the experience, the emotion of fear, it's a mental thing. Now, whether in the body or mind, it belongs to the body-mind. It doesn't belong to you. The moment I say, I am the mind, then I am afraid because fear is there in me. But if fear is there, here, then I'm not denying that there is a feeling of fear, but it belongs to the mind, there, not here. And therefore, you see a space opening up between you and the fear. And that's how it works. Deeper, this is the first step. The second step, the deeper step, which Krishna says, is there a fear in the mind? Is there a mind? Is there a body at all? Or is the world, body, mind, all appearances in me the one unchanging, undivided, non-dual consciousness? There is no world apart from you, the ever-shining, radiant awareness. There is no body apart from you, the ever-shining, radiant awareness. Swami, what nonsense. Can't you see the body? No, let's just stay with the question. A monk once challenged this in the monastery, is saying, what nonsense to say that the world is an appearance, the world is an illusion, Jagat Mithya. Can't these people, these non-dualists, can't they see it here? Here is the sky, here is the temple, here is the Ganga. We are standing in the monastery in Belur. Can't you see it? I didn't say it because he was a senior monk, but my response would be immediately, notice your language, Swami. You said, you see it. In your seeing, which takes precedence? The seeing or the object? The seeing takes precedence. In your seeing, you see sky, earth, temple, Ganga. In your seeing, there is sky, earth, temple, Ganga. The sky, earth, temple, Ganga is nothing but your seeing. 3 steps I've given you. There's a huge amount of metaphysics involved at each step. There is realism, there is idealism, and there is absolutism. 3 steps. Object presented to awareness. Object in awareness. An object indistinguishable from awareness. That's what happens in the second step. Oneness. Only the radiance of consciousness. What is it appearing as? It's appearing as body, mind, and indeed claustrophobic fear in the mind. No problem at all. I'll enjoy that fear in the mind. You might say that's a tall order. No problem, but there are people who can do it. And then you feel the fear loosening its hold upon you. It won't go away all of a sudden. See, Vedanta gives knowledge. It doesn't change the world immediately. It won't even change the mind immediately. It's like a movie. Vedanta tells you it's a movie. It doesn't change the plot of the movie. But the very fact of it being a movie settles everything once for all. Then slowly the plot also will change. That's an interesting thing. Once you begin to see oneness, once you begin to relax into your immortality, your fearlessness, you will see the world begins to change. After all, the world is nothing but you. The world begins to change for you. The world will change, body will change, mind will. First the mind will change, then the body will change, and the world will change. But for the time being, avoid closed spaces. A question from here. Yes, the lady there. Oh, the gentleman here. Then you pass down the microphone there. So tell us your name and ask the question.
My name is Anthony. Thank you, Swamiji, for making these ancient teachings so accessible and understandable. But even with this understanding of us being the absolute reality, we still have to live in a relative world. So even if I knew the oneness of being, if I really knew it, I still can't act as if everything is one and the same. I have to still take care of myself as a separate individual and others. So my question is, at best we could act harmoniously, right? So my question is, why not just go after piecemeal happiness where we can, take a broader perspective when things get too difficult, act compassionately and harmoniously? I mean, that's what most of us do anyway. Why make such a big deal about this enlightenment project?
Right. No, it's a very good question, really. It's really a very, very good question. And that was Ingersoll's whole point. Robert Ingersoll's whole point was, why not do this piecemeal? Why not? The world is all that we can be sure of. And therefore, why bother with all this? Let me squeeze the orange of the world dry. That was Ingersoll's question. Basically, in principle, do you agree it's the same insight? Yes. That is true of just about all religion, except, I will be so bold as to say, for Advaita Vedanta and maybe some form of Dzogchen Buddhism. Here is the world is all that we are absolutely sure of, so I'll take that over all your theories and speculations. But here, no. Advaita Vedanta, this one existence, is all that we are absolutely sure of. It's not so difficult to see. Even Descartes came pretty close to it. When you say, I'm absolutely sure of it, he set out to find out what could one be absolutely sure of. Set out by doubting everything. The great skeptical project of Descartes. And he found out that the one thing he could not doubt was his own existence. Because to doubt it, he would have to exist. Cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. And then, see, here is the difference between the ancient Indian philosophers and Descartes, for example. His whole point was to find an absolutely certain basis for all knowledge. So once he had found that basis, my own existence, then he quickly turned outwards again to set up to make sure that all knowledge is safe. Whereas the Indian philosophers, the Sankhya, the Advaita, the Buddhists, they stayed with it. This is important. They stayed with this insight. Instead of rushing back into the world, how can we be sure of society, of the sky and the earth and God? And forget it. You have found this absolute certain existence yourself. Stay with it. What's it like? How many of those are there? What's it made of? Is it made of being? Is it made of consciousness? Is it made of what? What is it made of? Is it made of matter and neurons? This absolute certain existence. Stay with it. The Indian philosophers dug deep there. They had the same intuition as Descartes did. I remember reading the Descartes' Meditations. There is cogito ergo sum is a most well-known quote you have from Descartes. Everybody knows it. But there he says a very poignant thing. He says, Descartes writing there, he says, it's so strange that what I am sure of, I do not know anything about that. I cannot know anything about that. What's that? My own existence. And what I know so much about, I can never be sure of it. And then he just keeps it aside. It's a very powerful insight. But he keeps it aside and then he goes back into how can we be sure that there's a world? And then he says that, well, God is presenting this world to me. God is good. He wouldn't deceive me, so there must be a world. I remember reading this stuff, and our professor at Harvard University, she said, do you notice the standards of proof have slipped considerably? I mean, the cogito ergo sum is a tight piece of reasoning. It's really good. But when you go from there back to the world again, it's become loose again. Yeah. So the absolute certainty. It's not that just as Ingersoll said that the world is all that we can be certain of. No. Pay attention here to something like Advaita, for example. You'll see something that is even more certain than the world. Sri Ramakrishna, when Swami Vivekananda asked him, have you seen God? He said, yes, as I see you, even more clearly. What does that mean? Does he have cataracts or something? Even more clearly. Now I'll share with you something which I heard. I cannot tell the name. This was a senior professor from India I met her recently at a conference, and she said that when she was a young girl, she used to go to the very well-known saint in those days in north of India, Anandamayima. So she used to go and visit, and she was very close to the saint, who was a simple village lady, small town lady, but also a God-intoxicated saint, like a divine child herself. Anyway, so this lady who is a professor of philosophy, she said, as I grew up in my teens, I started reading, skeptical philosophy, rationalist philosophy. I said, you must have been a remarkable 13-year-old to read heavy philosophy at that age. Anyway, so for the first time it struck me, all this could be false. I mean, God could not exist. And this lady, Anandamayima, is so God-intoxicated. But maybe God, it's all an hallucination. Here are all the philosophers with nice arguments to show that maybe God doesn't exist. So like Ingersoll again. Now see what happens. She said, I went to her one day. And she was alone in her room. She was lying down on the floor on a mat. I went into the room, and she started, as usual, talking about God, lying down there. And I said to her, Mother, maybe God doesn't exist. Maybe God doesn't exist. She sat up and looked at me and called me, come here. And I went and sit down. And I went and sat in front of her, and she said, it's still so vivid to me. She looked into my eyes, and if you've seen pictures of Anandamayima, she had the most extraordinary eyes. She looked deep into my eyes and said, tell me, you are sitting here talking to me. Is this true or not? Is this real or not? I said, yes, this is real. And I tell you, God is more real than this. She said, I've never forgotten that. Now that might be, you might say it's a proclamation of a saint, but logically, how do you understand it? Logically, you understand it the way Descartes did. Yeah. So it is more sure than this world. Why would you not base your life on what you are sure of? Ingersoll's argument, I'm sure of this world, which is revealed to me by my senses, so I'm basing my life on what my senses tell me. Vivekananda, what was the essence of his reply to Ingersoll? The essence was, even my senses and my mind and all of this, my limited existence, all of it is revealed by consciousness. So I'll base my life on what's most sure, that I am awareness, I am consciousness. And then again, look at the difference. The taking it piecemeal approach. We have been doing it all our lives, and all of civilization is the history of taking it piecemeal. It hasn't done us much good. Whatever good has done us is this. Not much good. A good deal of the good that we have actually comes from religion. Most of ancient civilization was built up around religion, all kinds of religion. So the little bit of good that we have in this relative world has seeped down from the transcendent into this world. And here is this philosophy, Advaita Vedanta, this extraordinary insight telling us that transcendent, which seems to be so mysterious and unknowable, is you. You are that reality. Why not base our life on that? Why not investigate a little further and then try to live it? Yeah, very good question. Yes.
Swami, my name is Sumi. My question is really one about the vocabulary, the language that is used in this 13th chapter. You hear the language of Sankhya. You hear the field and its knower, Prakriti and Purusha. Obviously, Sankhya is... we owe a huge debt to Sankhya in our philosophic tradition. But I just am curious as to why the Gita uses this language, because after all, our tradition goes way back to the Upanishads, where the sages do not bifurcate their vision of the world. There is no duality. But is this because the Ramayana and the Mahabharata are based historically, as that very well-known scholar said, in the age of unreason, and bhakti being unreason, in a very divine madness, nothing, not to put bhakti in the second row, but it is a very different perspective, a very different paradigm. So I'm curious about that. And also, in the narrative of the 13th chapter, there seems to be this huge jump, this changing horses midstream, where you're trying to cancel the division, the duality that Sankhya sets up, and yet suddenly you postulate Krishna. Both of them are kind of interesting conundrums, although one understands what the meaning of the field and its knower are. I'd love to hear your comments.
The age of unreason, I don't give too much credence to all that, you know. It's more like you have the insight of the Upanishads, and sort of along with that, a little later you have the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, and Krishna as the teacher of the Gita, and the formal beginning of the systems a little later. So this very sharp distinction between Sankhya, Yoga, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Vedanta, and the various Buddhist systems and Jaina systems, I think it comes a little later. Historically, I know scholars will debate it back and forth all the time. So the great masters, whether it's Krishna teaching the Gita or Sri Ramakrishna, if you look at the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, it's almost impossible to categorize him. Is he a bhakta? Is he a jnani? Is he a Vedantin? Is he a dualist, non-dualist? What is he? Is he a Shaktadvaitin? He moves so smoothly between these different categories. And Krishna does that too. So we have multiple streams of thought flowing into the Gita and flowing out of the Gita there. And there seems to be less systematization at that point than there came later on. Yes. But we do owe a lot to all these masters. I often say something like Advaita Vedanta, especially in its sort of finished form in the medieval period. If you unpack the box, on top it says Advaita Vedanta. If you unpack the box, you will find the logic borrowed from Nyaya and Navya Nyaya, the entire logical apparatus. You will find the concept of pure consciousness borrowed almost entirely from Sankhya. And you will find yogic meditation techniques borrowed from Patanjali Yoga. You will find the hermeneutics of the Purva Mimamsakas used to interpret the Upanishads. They are all developed by Purva Mimamsakas. None of it is developed by Shankara. And you will find it all used, and including, I am bold enough to say, logical insights developed by the great Buddhist masters, Nagarjuna, Chandrakirti, Dharmakirti, Vasubandhu. Some of those insights are, and some terminology is incorporated. And then the box is again closed and you see Advaita Vedanta. It's like, you open up the box, inside, made in China. So a great deal of the machinery inside Advaita Vedanta owes its existence to a long development in Indian philosophy. And they were not narrow about it. They debated with each other fiercely. But when they debated with each other, they sort of exchanged the DNA of each other into their own philosophy. You see these philosophies evolving together. One of the two periods of maximum development of Indian philosophy, where first period was nearly 1,000-year debate between the Buddhists and the Hindu systems, so-called, the various orthodox schools of Hinduism, for nearly 1,000 years. And it led to a flowering of philosophy on both sides. Buddhist philosophy developed to very sophisticated heights, and so did the Hindu systems of philosophy. Jaina philosophy also developed around that time. The second time of the flowering of Indian philosophy was more internal to Hinduism. When Advaita Vedanta became so paramount, the other schools of Vedanta rose up, especially the Dvaita and Vishishta Dvaita, and there were fierce dialectical fights between Advaita Vedanta and the other schools, which led to a further development of these schools, a shortening of logic, of language, of Navya Nyaya language, of epistemology. So that's good. I will leave it at that, and we'll conclude here. Thank you so much.
Big time, all of you.